Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Rabbi Adam Kligfeld's weekly Rashi study class.
We just finished the verse and the Rashi on chapter 5, verse 13. So we'll start with verse 14, but let's go back one verse quickly just to get us moving. Verse 13 of chapter 5, we had this wonderful verb, atzim v'hanogsim atzim lemor, that the taskmasters were utzing them, were pushing them, were driving them, saying, kaluma sechem devar yom biyomo, finish your duties, the things you're supposed to do, your obligations, as a daily thing, a devar yom biyomo, a thing each day. Ka'asher biyot hateven, and this is very terse language, something like such as was the case when there had been straw, but it takes many more English words to say it in Hebrew, meaning you still have the same obligations to produce the lebenim, the bricks, from when you were also given the straw directly to do it. Now you're not given the straw, you have to collect it yourself. That's where we were, and we dealt with the Rashi on this, and now we're on verse 14. Elon, welcome back. How's your father?
Still in ICU.
Oh, nice.
Still trying to kickstart his kidneys with dialysis. Still low blood pressure. So I'm going to go back next week. So.
All right. He's in our brachas, Elon.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's read verse 14. Rick, do you want to read verse 14? Rick, are you there?
Yeah,
okay.
I wasn't there, but now I am there.
Unlike the Holy One, who always has been there. One of the many ways that you are not like God. But you have some God-like attributes. Keep going.
I didn't do anything yet. Can't keep going if I haven't done anything. Verse 14, you say, Vayaku?
Yeah, Vayuku.
Correct. Vayuku. Shotrei b'nei Yisrael asher samu alehem nogsei faro lemor. So that's the midpoint. And Madua has the pazer. Lo chilitem chokchem lilbon kit mol shil shom. We've seen that before. Gam timo gam hayom.
Right. So before you even try to translate, this is almost like a sentence from which words that we can intuit have been removed. So we're going to be able to fill in the gap, but it's as if an editor came in and took out, a preposition here, a verb there. That exercise that if you take out a certain percentage of the letters in a paragraph, most Americans can read it fluently. Like 30% of the letters, you still know exactly what's being said because your brain fills in the difference. This is almost a verse where it was a test. How many connecting phrases can we remove and still have it mean what the reader will know what it's supposed to say? So let's give it a shot.
So vayaku is the verb, and going into the English, have to go ways into it. Had put over them is what I see here. I'm not familiar with vayaku.
You know what? The last time we had this root was way back in a scene with Moshe and some Egyptians. Look back.
It looks like Vayachulu. That's why I said Vayeh.
That's right.
The first time.
Everybody look back on chapter 2, verse 12. Moshe's awakening when he sees the Egyptian wailing on the Israelite. Actually, it's two verses in a row. So verse 11, Vayhi bayim yahem, during those days, Vayigdal Moshe grew up, Vayetze el achav, he went out to his brethren, Vayar b'sivlotam, he saw their sufferings. It's amazing writing, just so much said in 9 words. Vayar ish mitzri, he saw an Egyptian man, makeh, smiting, ish ivri me'achav,
that's the Vayuku, is
right.
Makeh.
The Hebrew man from his brothers, and then Vayifen Kovacho, he looked this way and that. Vayarki Einish, he saw there was no man. We're not going to go back into the many different things that could mean. Vayach, and he smote. Etamitri, the Egyptian. So
Yeah.
it's from the root hey kaf hey, and in the
Hey,
present
kaf,
tense you add a mem like the root davar gets a mem for midaber. That's why it's makeh. And because there's a hey in the beginning and a hey in the end of the root, those hays sometimes disappear. So vayuku is actually the if you want to be, it's the hufal form of the root lihakot, and it's passive. So it means they were smitten, they were hit, or doesn't mean they were killed, right? In the Egyptian scene, the second version of what the second sentence means that Moshe killed the Egyptian. Here it just means they were smacked down, right? They were beaten. In Rabbinic Hebrew, the makot, right, were the lashes that a Jew would be given if they were violating a certain number of mitzvot, right, or certain mitzvot. So vayuku, they were smitten.
The plagues.
The
plagues.
Yeah, Eser Makot, exactly right. Eser Makot, the 10 plagues. That's the exact same root.
So
right?
that's a nice play on words if the author is using it here, and then it's echoing at the plagues later on.
Yeah.
But the translation from the Silverman here had put over them. It doesn't do the violence of the hitting. It doesn't do that justice, right? They hit him with all this burden, right?
No. The hitting is what happened to the Shotrim. Finish. Try to translate the sentence.
Oh, okay, we're smitten. Okay, I didn't see that.
The subject of Vayuku is the phrase Shotrei b'nei Yisrael asher samu aleihem noksei Faro, right? So they were smitten. Who were smitten? Shotrei b'nei Yisrael asher samu aleihem noksei Faro. So what is that phrase Shotrei b'nei Yisrael asher samu aleihem noksei Faro mean?
You just translated it.
You translate it. I feel like I'm in an Abbott and Costello routine. So I didn't translate it. I just read it several times.
Shotrei b'nei Yisrael are here. It says the bailiffs, but those are the taskmasters, or the
We were using supervisor before. Not that that's the only word, but like the if you will, if you want to use terrible Nazi imagery, the capos, right? The Israelites who were recruited by the Egyptians to help mete out the tyranny. Yeah.
Okay. The Shotrei b'nei Israel, asher samu aleihem, that were put on them, on the rest of the population. I'm not doing well with this.
It's hard because you have a verb, and then you have a long phrase, which is the subject of the verb. And in that phrase, you have another verb where the subject comes afterwards. So the way I would build it is this way. No, the Shotrim, who were Israelites, that the Nogsei Paro had Samu Aleihem, if I want to Hebrew English it, right? So you have the Nogsei Paro, those are the taskmasters. They had put on the Israelites, the slaves, Shotrim, from among the Israelites. And actually, the dependent clause is not even done yet, because you could really say that what's the subject of Vayuku? All of the rest of the verse. Who were smitten? The very Shotrim, supervisors, who had been placed over the Israelites by the Nogsei Pharaoh. And which Nogsei Pharaoh? The ones who had said, this is the continuation of the verse, Lemor, Madua lo chilitem chokem, why don't you complete? I'm doing a little bit of your work for you, Rick. Why do you not complete your chochem, your law, but your obligation, lil bone, to make bricks, kitmol shilshom, as the day before yesterday, gam tmol gam hayom, also yesterday and also today. All of those, so all of that is driving the verb vayuku, but you've got several like subclauses in there. So it's sort of hard to make sense of, but you could build it backwards. Those taskmasters, the Nogsim, who had said to the Israelites, why aren't you completing your obligations as you used to? And who had put upon the Israelites shotrim, supervisors, those supervisors were smitten. But it's very hard to say that in one sentence. Here's how Ever Fox does it. And the officers of the children of Israel, whom Pharaoh's slave drivers had set over them, were beaten, and then he has to make things up, they said to them, who's the they? It's the taskmasters had said to the Israelites, for what reason have you not finished making your allocation as yesterday and the day before? So yesterday, so today, ? It's still clunky even with Ever Fox, and he usually unclunkifies it. Here's my question for you. Does anyone have a question as to the not the structure, but the raw meaning of this verse? Or anyone want to give a comment on just the information that is being communicated? Joel, your hand is up, and I saw Norm and Rachel's hand was up before also. But Joel, since I see your hand now.
I just want to unclunkify it a little bit by just saying that's what the taskmasters said to the shotrim as they beat them. In other words, the supervisors were responsible for getting the daily quota, and if the Israelites didn't get the daily quota, the supervisors were beaten, saying, "You didn't get your daily quota. I'm beating you now."
I accept that emendation. I think it's not the only way to read it, but that you're saying that once we get to the Lemor Madua, it's no longer defining or describing what had happened previously, but it's actually adding on to the Vayuku. They smote them, and then they also said this while they were smiting them. I accept that.
Exactly. Yeah. And also they were saying it to the supervisors,
to the Shotrim, not to the Israelites. Possible? Okay. Larry, Diane?
I'm agreeing with Joel completely. So it's a strange verse because it's written, I think, in the passive. So you've got the Shotrei B'nai Yisrael, as you said, were the kapos. They're the second tier, all right, and they were put by the taskmasters, who are the first level, not including the Pharaoh. So the understanding that Joel has and is the same as the reading that Alter has, and the overseers of the Israelites, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten, saying. So the question is, who's the saying? And it's pretty clear the saying happens to be Pharaoh's taskmasters. So if you put it actively, you would say Pharaoh's taskmasters beat the overseers of the Israelites, saying. And Alter has an interesting comment about this. He says, the Egyptians instituted an effective chain of command for forced labor. It would not be feasible to beat all the teeming thousands of Hebrew slaves. So when they fail to produce their daily quota, the Israelite overseers are made personally responsible and are beaten by the Egyptian slave drivers. The overseers then in turn protest to Pharaoh, crying out or screaming, which is a predictable reaction to the beating. So, and I suppose, I can't think of any examples, that's a very effective way to rule, is you threaten those who are in charge, that they're the ones that are going to suffer, and you make them suffer. So they have an incentive to make sure that the people are doing the work.
Yeah, it's an effective way to do any leadership, whether it's tyrannical leadership or healthy leadership, right? That the one at the top of the chain doesn't always have direct contact with every subject. Lahavdil, hopefully, Elef Alfei Havdalot. I remember my last year of rabbinical school, we had a seminar really talking about, now that you're really on the way out and about to go serve the Jews, as opposed to just learning all the material. We talked about the truly different structures and cultures of synagogues based on their sizes. And I remember at the time pushing against this idea and feeling that this was overly wonky and overly theoretical. And when a rabbi's out there, a rabbi's just actually out there teaching Torah and serving people's needs. And I had a hard time taking this in. And they basically said that the smallest synagogue is kind of like a mom and pop shul. where nothing happens if the rabbi is not involved directly. And then the largest synagogue really operates like a corporate nonprofit. And primarily the rabbi is the rabbi, frankly, to the board and to the donors. And then it's other people on the staff who are really the rabbis or the educators of the congregation. I was very upset by that notion, just the idea that just by dint of the size of the institution, that the rabbi's task would change radically. Having served in a tiny congregation and now serve in a larger congregation, I will say that on some level that's inevitable, right? I hope it's the case that no one here feels that primarily I'm a rabbi to the board of directors rather than a rabbi to the synagogue. But it is the case that an enormous amount of what I hope gets done in the institution and a vision that I have for it this year, next 5 to 10 years, is being done by people elsewhere in the structure of the institution. That's healthy delegation. And if I were a tyrant, right, that would be healthy delegation also. It wouldn't be me individually smiting every constituent. It would be me making sure I had people to do the smiting for me. Before we go to Joanna, Larry, can you read Kaplan on this? I'm wondering how he puts the sentence together. And the more I think about it, the more I also accept Joel's emendation. It's interesting. I never read the verse that way. I don't know why. I always read the verse as the Lamor continuing to describe who had been doing the smiting of the supervisors. Who? The very ones who had said, how come you're not doing your work? But now I think it makes more sense to say that this Madua lo chilitem is happening while the smiting is happening. But read Aryeh Kaplan.
The Israelite foremen, whom Pharaoh's administrators had appointed, were flogged, period. They were told, yesterday and today you did not complete your quotas. Why didn't you make as many bricks as before?
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. So he actually turns it into the he continues the passive voice to the second half of the verse, even though it's not necessarily has to be translated that way. Great, Joanna, and then I want to ask people about how we're thinking about the Kitmol Shalshom and the Kitmol Gam Hayom, because we kind of know what it means, but I want to break down what the words mean. Joanna?
So it always fascinates me, the different words for leadership that are used. So far, we've had Zekenim and Shotrim. And I'm kind of connecting a little bit to Parshat Shoftim when it talks about all the different kinds of leaders, and you have to judge fairly the leaders you have in those times. And I wonder if it's a read back to this, because this kind of leader, I think, many in Bnei Israel might not be so happy with, because they're caught between a rock and a hard place. And, I don't know, I find it fascinating, this term that's used here, and that we see it again in Shoftim v'Shotrim. Right.
We're going to see in Rashi a little bit that this layer of Shotrim that are deputized into a horrific place in the system to have to advocate for, but also beat down and squeeze their own constituents, is very much connected, at least in Rashi and the Midrash's imagination, to what Moshe is going to beg God for in a couple of chapters in Parshat Yitro. And he says, I can't do this all myself. I need helpers. I need Zekenim. And Shoftim v'Shotrim is a delayed reaction to that, right? So let's say it this way, we're seeing in travail and in suffering the embryonic stage of future Israelite leadership. We're just seeing it imposed in a tyrannical situation, but it's actually, but this structure, this remnant, is going to persist even when we're creating our own reality rather than being created for us. This may sound like a very strange association, but you know me long enough to know that I make these associations. I remember when the revelatory experience it was when I realized that the voice of my infant daughter as she babbled was actually becoming her speaking voice. I think before that, I thought, oh, there's a baby babbling, and that's all generic. And then someone develops a speaking voice, and it's totally different. And when you're watching in real time, it's like, oh no, the very vocal cords that are producing the sounds that are babbling and googling and goggling, that's going to be the sound of her voice as she's producing words. It's not like a hard break between them. That was a delightful thing to witness. The very ways in which the Israelites are learning how to be in relationship with each other in slavery is going to show itself post-slavery as they're developing a life for how to serve not a tyrannical Lord, but hopefully a benevolent Lord. And you could trace that. Rebecca or Leonard, I don't know who raised their hand.
Yeah, I was wondering in verse 12, where it says the people had to scatter throughout the land of Egypt to gather the straw. I wonder if the reason that the taskmasters are confronting the supervisors and beating them is because a lot of the people aren't back yet. They're still out gathering straw. Not only have they not brought the straw back, but there's not a full workforce available yet. They're still out gathering. So maybe that's why they confront the supervisors.
Yeah, that's interesting. Which pushes us to be a little more precise in our kitmol shilshom gatmol gam hayom, because your comment, Rebecca, suggesting that we're dealing with a long period of time, and the reason why the Shotrim are the ones being beaten is because there was like an expedition party to go get more straw, and they haven't returned yet. But the question is, are we dealing with like a vague period of time or a very specific period of time? If we go back to the pshat of the verse, which is hard to figure out, and Rashi is going to help us, or at least Rashi is going to tell us what he thinks it means. So the madua lo chilitem, why have you not completed chokchem, your duty, your obligation, lil bone, to make bricks? What do we think kitmol shilshom gam tmol gam hayom means, right? Because kitmol shilshom, if we take it, it's hard to take it the way it means in modern Hebrew. But if we tried to, kitmol shilshom would mean like yesterday and the day before, gam tmol gam hayom, also yesterday and today. What do we think that 4 or 5 word phrase actually means? Anyone want to give a shot at it without relying on the translations in front of you, but relying on your sense of what the words mean and what the sentence could or should mean? Anyone? If no, then we'll wait and see how Rashi reads it. But it's an interesting structure, right? Because we have both the Tmol Shilshom, which we've seen could mean in the Torah not just explicitly yesterday and the day before, as it would in modern Hebrew, but just a way of saying as in the past.
And that was in verse 7, right?
Right.
That's where I heard it before.
But then he adds in gam tmol gam hayom, also yesterday, also today. So we have to work and see what that could possibly mean. Excuse me. Joanne and then Joel?
So the way I read it is like in the recent past, the day before yesterday, you were doing a certain allotment every day. But in the more recent past, as in yesterday and today, since, basically, in other words, since Pharaoh made this new decree that you're not getting the straw anymore, you're not living up to the standards. You're not doing what you need to be doing. And
so how do you find that precisely in those words? Walk me through those words.
Because of where the gams are. To me, the day before yesterday is separated from yesterday and today. So what was different about yesterday and today than the further back past? In the further back past, you were meeting the expectation, but now the expectation is the same, even though the work has changed and you're not meeting it. Gam tamol, gam hayom.
So you're sort of reading the gam v'gam as a neither nor, right? Neither yesterday, tmol, neither today, hayom, were you completing things as you completed them, kitmol shalshom, which doesn't mean just the day before yesterday, but as in the past. That's how you're reading it, Joanne?
Right. Like kitmol shalshom to me is all the days before yesterday and today.
Aha, great. Okay. Larry, Diane, and that's actually very close to what Rashi is going to read, but not the only way to put those words together.
Anybody think mathematically? So if you define things like segments and intervals and rays, if you know what those are, a ray is something that starts at a point and goes on forever.
Wait, Larry, this is Rashi, not Learned League. You have to make a distinction.
Yeah, but this fits in perfectly. So a ray is like a straight line that goes on forever. It starts at one point and goes on forever. Imagine that you actually have a line that goes on in infinity, and you have 3 points on the line. You have A, B, and C. So A is Shilshom, it's the furthest back. B is Atmol, or Tamol, it's in the middle. And C is Hayom. So what he's saying is, from the ray that goes from Tamol to Shilshom, from B to A, and on forever. In the past, forever, you did one thing, but now, from yesterday through today onto the future, the ray that's going from B to A and extends to the future, you're doing something else. So mathematically, it's perfect. In the past, dividing at yesterday, you did this, and in the future, this is what you're doing, the present and the future.
What I like most about that comment is that it does a better job than Rashi's about to do of explaining why Tmol appears twice. That's really wonderful because you're doing BA and BC. That's
Exactly.
great. That's great. So let's use that as a jumping off point to Rashi. Rick, you're resurrected. So if you want to read.
Sure. Sure. Vayaku shotrei b'nei Yisrael. Vayuku, right. Vayuku shotrei b'nei Yisrael. Hashotrim Yisraelim hayu.
Period. So first thing he's saying is, if you're wondering, reader, who these Shotrim were, right? He's telling us, reminding us that they were Israelites. And just look back at Rashi on verse 6 for a second. When Rashi, we first get the word nogsim in verse 6, Rashi says nogsim, mitzriim hayu, the nogsim, the noges, the taskmasters were Egyptian, the hashotrim hayu Yisraelim, the shotrim, however, whatever we're going to use, the supervisors were Israelites. Hanoges mumune al kama shotrim, each taskmaster was appointed, had authority over a bunch of shotrim. The hashoter, and each supervisor, mimune lirdot be'osei hamlacha, had to have dominion over those who are actually doing the work. So Rashi's already told us that. He's now retelling us that in concise language. Hashotrim Yisraelim hayu. If you've forgotten reader, and we hadn't forgotten, but he wants to make sure we hadn't forgotten. These are the Israelites. Okay.
V'chasim al chaverehem mil dachkam.
Right. See if you can do that. Does anyone know what chas means? What is chet samech?
Chas v'chalila.
Right. What is that word? What is the chas in chas v'chalila or chas v'shalom mean?
Don't know.
There's a phrase that I sometimes teach when I'm doing chametz. Rachmana chasa al mamonam shel Yisrael. Rahman, the Holy One, has mercy. Chas really means mercy for the financial situations of the Israelites.
Related to chesed?
That's interesting. If it's related to chesed, it's related in that notion that sometimes the first two letters create a family of verbs, but it's not directly related. It's not the same root, but it might be in the family of roots, in like the genus of roots.
Yeah.
And when we say that phrase, Rahmana chasa al mamonam shel Yisrael, and this is not a joke, it's why you have to get rid of the cereal in your house before Pesach, but you're allowed to keep your whiskey, right? You don't have to get to rid the chametz for your house. You shouldn't have to get rid of things that have an enormous amount of value, right? Because chas means have mercy on. Joel, you're going to say something on that point before we continue?
Yeah, that's what God says in Jonah, Ani lo achus al Nineveh.
Right. Chasta al hakikayon. Right. That you had mercy. You were concerned about this gourd that just came up yesterday. Today, you don't want me to have mercy on the Ninevites. Good. Okay. So and Rick, it's really interesting. I never connected chas to chesed But okay, I got to think about that. Go ahead. So what does chasim al chavrehem miledochkam mean?
So the Israelite shotrim, I'm having such difficulty separating the nouns, but the shotrim are having mercy on their fellows.
Miledochkam. The root is you have the verb dochek, to press. Lidochek, lidchok is to press. Lidochkam, to press them. Miledochkam means something like that they had mercy on their friends. You have to add in words, such that they didn't want to have to press them, or they mercifully chose not to press them. Okay, because that's what they've been asked to do. They had been asked by their taskmasters, the Noksim, press those slaves. They had mercy on them, which held them back from pressing them. Okay, ukshayu
mashlimim halavenim lenogsim shehem mitzriyim.
A lot of eames there. Yeah.
So when they handed over the bricks, levanim, to the taskmasters, those are the who were Egyptians.
Okay? Right. What's mashlimim? Shalom, not shalom, but shalem.
Complete.
Right. So kshahayu mashlimim, when they had finished, we have to add in any individual day's worth of work. And is the hayu the slaves, or is hayu the shotrim, meaning who's actually doing the completed work? It's not even that important. But and they had handed over, I like that, or shown the number of bricks to the taskmasters who were Egyptians. Yeah, Baya.
V'haya haser min haschum. Some it was deficient in the total.
Right. So
haser, it means it's missing. Min
right.
haschum.
Yeah, from the amount. So at the end of a given day, you had to show how many you had done. Right. And if since there were fewer, and why were there fewer? Because the supervisors were not pressing the Israelites to make as many as they had before, because they now had new responsibilities on them to collect the teven. Hayu
malkin otam al shalo dachaku. There's that verb again. Et osei hamlacha.
Period. So we need to fill in the subject and the verb here. They would whip or beat them. Who's the they and who's the them?
The Egyptians and the Israelites?
Right. The Egyptian Nogsim would, this is Malkin. So in the Hebrew root for to smite or to whip is lehakot, but the rabbinic Hebrew, by the time we get the Talmud, it's a different word, lehalkot, and the kaf becomes a kuf. And so Malkin means to whip, to beat. So they beat the Israelites. Why? Al shalo dachaku et oseh hamlacha. Why did the Nogsim whip the Hebrew supervisors?
Because they hadn't urged on the Israelite workmen.
Right. So it's interesting. Who gets whipped? Not the workers who weren't doing their work, but the supervisors who weren't forcing the workers to work more. Going back to the levels of tyranny, right? The slaves are in a terrible situation anyway. But the ones who are getting the direct heat here are the ones who refuse to make the slave situations worse. Okay? So that's why you kushut rei b'nei Israel. Questions or comments on that? Keep going.
Lefichach zachu otam shotrim liot Sanhedrin. Okay. On this account, these supervisors, the shotrim, were privileged to become members of the Sanhedrin later on.
Right. So what a 90-degree turn. So Rashi starts by helping us understand a verse that was missing a lot of components. And we're now understanding the full weight of the experience of a supervisor. And Rashi says, guess what? That no one would want to be in that situation. But because of their merit, right? It's akin almost to the merit of the midwives who refused to do Pharaoh's dirty work, and we remember all those midrashim talk about how they were rewarded in many different ways and who they became. These shotrim, and we're going to get a proof text in a second, they became the Sanhedrin, as it were. And I think Rashi here is using the word Sanhedrin generally, not specifically, because he's not going that anachronistic. He's not saying they lived long enough to be the Sanhedrin in Jerusalem, pre-Talmudic era, but they became the ones responsible for the people in good times, because they agreed to be responsible. They were forced into being responsible for the Israelites in bad times, and they did not use their authority to make it worse for the people down in the flesh pots. V'ne'etzal
min haruach asher al Moshe v'husam, is that the sin, aleihem?
Yep. What does that mean? Ne'etzal min haruach asher al Moshe v'husam aleihem. Phrase? Anyone know what that might be referring to?
I have the Silverman translation.
Try to do it without the translation.
The
ruach asher al Moshe.
The spirit on Moses, the
Holy Spirit that allowed Moses to shine and to speak with authority. Ne'etzal. Sometimes means like it was like divided from, or a portion of that holy divine spirit that had been placed so squarely on Moshe was taken from Moshe. Vehusam, this is the nifal, or maybe the hufal, the passive of lasim. Lasim is to put. So husam was put, or was placed, aleihem.
Okay.
Meaning what?
That because they had done this good thing in taking the beating, that they get the part of the leadership, like they were some of the judges in the Shof team.
Right, and think of the parallel here. Moshe, we referenced the scene earlier. Moshe gets in between the Egyptians and the Israelites, and as at least immediately in that scene, because of that, he has to flee. But that sets him up for being a worthy leader of the Israelites. The Shotrim are also, they were placed against their will, probably, between the Egyptians and the Israelites, but they used their place, rather than to push down, to push up. And to push up is very, very dangerous in that situation. And as a result of using their position to push up rather than push down, they get to share the very glory, the very hod and tiferet that Moshe gets as a result of his leadership. Shene'emar
esfe li shivim ish miziknei Yisrael v'gomer, and you're pulling it up there. I see.
Right.
Neotan sheyadata hatova.
Hold on.
Okay.
So Rashi is proof texting us from Bamidbar, chapter 11.
Asaf, gather, yeah.
Right. So
they were gathering the straw, right?
Okay, nice.
The same verb, isn't it?
Let's go back a little bit. So in Parshat Yitro, that's the first time that Moshe says, I need help managing these people. But later on in this Parsha, I think this is Balotcha, in one of the many times which the Israelites are not getting their needs met, they're hungry, they're thirsty, they are demoralized. Where's my meat? God, these are great verses. Just to linger on them a little bit. So, verse 11, Vayomer Moshe Adonai, Moses said to God, Lama hareota la'avdecha, why are you making this job so hard? Why are you so bad to your servant, meaning me? Lama lo matzati chen beinecha, what have I not found favor in your eyes? Lasumit at masa, excellent pun there, masa Moshe. Lasumit masa kol ha'am azeh, you've put the entire burden of this people on me, right? I need some in-betweeners. Ha'anochi hariti, did I give birth? Et kol ha'amazeh, hariti from herayon. Was I pregnant? Right? Was I the one who was birthing this nation? Imanochi latihu, did I give birth to it? Ki tomar alai, such that you would say to me, Sa'eu b'chekecha, they're your responsibility. Put them in your bosom. Kasher yisau me'atayonek, just as a nursemaid would take the baby, would care for the baby's needs. Am I that responsible for the people, God, that you would put that on me? Asher nishbat labotav, and take them all the way to the land. My ayin li basar. Where do you want me to get the meat? Latet lechol am to this nation. Ki yivku alayle more when they wail upon me and say, T'nalano basar v'nochela, give us the meat that we'll eat. Lo uchal anochi levadi laseit kol amazeh. I cannot on my own bear, laseit, carry this whole people. Ki kaved mimen, too heavy. Bim kachaat oseli, if this is what you're really going to ask of me, hargeni na harog, kill me now. I've never once experienced that feeling as a rabbi. I find the burden of this congregation to always be a light, joy, and a merit. If I really have found favor in your eye, I don't want to, he's suicidal. I don't want to be witness to my own misery. Vayomer Adonai al Moshe, God said to Moses, I'm listening to you. I got an idea. Esfali shivim ish. Collect for me 70 people. Miziknei Yisrael. Someone was talking about before the different words we'd use. From the elders of Israel. Asher yadata, whom you know. I'm emphasizing that because Rashi is, about whom you have specific experience and evidence. Ki heim ziknei ha'am vishotrav. That they are not only the elders nation, but they have already proven themselves, I'm interpolating here, to be proper supervisors, proper shotrim. V'lakachta otam el ohel moed, take them into the tent of meeting. Up until now, Moshe, only you have gone in there. You want to be removed of some of the burden? Fine. You're also going to be removed of some of the uniqueness in our relationship. V'hit yatzvu sham am imach. Let them have them stand up there right next to you. So in that verse, right, in context, all the verse is God saying, I've listened to you. Just so you know, Moshe, if you want less burden, you're going to have less kavod. You're going to have less uniqueness. You're going to have more people who are able to say that they are God's messengers, right? Fine. But what Rashi's saying is this verse completes our verse, because this is where those shotrim are given their reward for having proven themselves to be worthy intercessors between a Moshe and the Israelites, or even a taskmaster in the Israelites. So with that in mind, well, I see two hands, and then we'll finish the Rashi. Lara, Diane, then Renee.
I just want to know where Rashi gets, and I think I know the answer, where Rashi gets that the Shotrim were doing acts of kindness. How does he know that they did not insist that the Israelites do their work? I think the answer is it's in the Midrash, but I don't see it in our verses at all. There's nothing that would suggest that they hesitated.
I think you can find it in the Pshat, because I think the Midrash tried to find it in the Pshat. I think it's the answer to the question of why were the supervisors smitten and not the Israelites, right? Why? So if the Shotrim were the Shotrim who were told, who had been placed over the Israelites, were smitten, and while they were smitten, they were being yelled at, saying, "Why haven't you finished all your obligations?" Then it's not a far jump to say, "Why didn't you force them to do the very thing I asked you to make them do, which is to make as many today as they made 3 days ago?"
Okay, the inference is from their being punished here that they must have done something. But I'm saying in the verses before, there's nothing that suggests that they held back.
Correct. We don't have it declarative or in the narrative that up until now they held back. You're right. It's an inference from this verse. Why else would they have been the one beaten rather than the individual Israelites who didn't complete their complement? Yeah.
Thank you.
Renee and then Barry. I'll stop the share.
So this is an old comment.
Sorry.
Relevant, but I'm just curious if anyone else happened to kind of see a relationship between the way they've gotten the guards and the Israelite guards and the other ones to the Shoah, because there were many Jews that were also put in that position of having to be the guards of their fellow Jews.
Yeah, I think, Renee, at one point you were having a hard time connecting to the Zoom session, and may have been during that we had made that reference, right? That it's a wrenching reference, but this is the birth, as it were, of the notion of a capo, of a Nazi-like figure in our culture, or any figure, forcing the members of that own that population to do the awful work for them. Yeah, it's overly evocative. Barry and then Joanna.
Well, by the Egyptian taskmasters complaining to the Israelite overseers that they're not producing as the quota required, would imply that the Israelite overseers have not been pushing hard enough on the Israelites to produce.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think that what Larry is pointing out is that we weren't told that they weren't pushing them hard enough, but I think that that's the very inference that Rashi is making and that the Midrash is making. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been the ones who were punished, right? Great. Joanna, and then Norm.
So not to give too much of a spoiler alert, but I was remembering, and then so I scanned ahead to a few psukim from now, when the Shotrim appear before Paro, and as they leave Paro, they encounter Moshe and Aharon, and they don't speak kindly to them. And so I'm like, oh, and so what does Rashi have to say about that? Because they're not really acting like leaders in that verse in the way they talk to Moshe and Aharon, and yet they get this great merit. And it fascinates me now that Rashi is silent on verse 21. He has nothing to say about how they speak to Moshe and Aharon later on.
Specifically, as we're lingering in a zone of the intercessors, of the people who are the people who are. I'm trying to say how to say this. The victims are obviously the ones lowest down in the chain, but there are all sorts of people in between them that are ending up impacting how wretched their situation is. Let's kind of come back to that silence when we get to that verse. I'm always fascinated because I feel like I know Rashi well, which is presumptuous because I know that there are true Rashi scholars out there. With no false humility, I'm not a Rashi scholar, but I've studied most of the commentaries of Rashi on most of the verses of the Torah many times, and I feel like I know his way. I still don't have a working theory as to when he does and does not comment. Like when he does comment, like I anticipate what he's going to ask in a verse. There's certain verses where he doesn't say anything, and I don't know, was he tired that day, or did he have a specific reason why he didn't feel like he needed to add something? And of course, we can't resolve it, but it's interesting to chew on.
He says in the verse 20, he says those are Datan and Aviram. So I think he's isolating those two as the bad guys, and the rest of them didn't quarrel so much with Moses and Aaron, so they were okay. But I don't know.
Let's wait till we get there. It'll only take us 6 weeks. Norm.
We're looking for reasons why the Shotrim might have been justifiably blamed. Did they, in fact, not push them hard enough? I don't think it's relevant because first, they were given a task that was unlikely to be successful, especially in the very short run. And second, a tyrant doesn't care about justice. A tyrant says, we're assigning you to be in charge of this, and if it doesn't work, you are going to be punished, and it doesn't matter how hard you tried or how hard you didn't try, you're going to be punished. So they've set it up in advance, they will be punished, and sure enough, they're punishing them, but it does not require any element of justice on the part of Pharaoh or Pharaoh's taskmasters for them to be punished. It doesn't matter whether they pushed very hard or not hard enough or not at all.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating comment, Norm. I'm trying to think if I can create the words I want to say in response to it, because what you're saying is very powerful in that it's actually the illogic that makes tyranny more tyrannical to experience, because it's not even predictable, right? Like you can do all the right things in the presence of a tyrant and still get whacked, right? Yeah. At the same time, a tyrant wants to have there to be even some logic to the illogic, because the tyrant wants to be wicked and brutal, but also effective and systemic. and if the tyrant wants to be tyrannical in a strategic way. So it's both the case that there's willy-nilly violence when you have a despot who's running things, and somehow the tyrant wants to have that tyrant's authority be understood, both in the fact that there's sometimes no rhyme or reason, and people who do the right things can get swept up, and they want the subject should actually know what to, that certain things are going to be punished in a certain way. So you can read this argument, this verse both ways. Like, it's very specifically important for the Israelites to know that the supervisors were punished for not pushing them, so that they feel the pain that the people who are trying to protect them were the ones who were brutalized, because that's awful also. And it's also important from Pharaoh's perspective, for the individual slaves to not even like, where's this violence coming from? We can't map that. We can't structure that. And which means that our society is even more bereft of reason than we thought. Somehow both of those, I think, are present in evil. Okay. We're still in the Rashi. So, and I sort of hinted at it, but Rick, now read the last few words in which Rashi makes the specific connection between that verse, which maybe I'll pull up again while you're doing it. Where are you, verse? Why that verse is specifically being invoked here. So we got to him quoting the verse. Go to the words me'otan.
Me'otan sheyadata hatova she'asu v'mitzrayim. Ki hem ziknei ha'am v'shotrav.
So when Rashi reads our verse from Bamidbar, where God says here, 70 elders, Miziknei Yisrael, Asher Yadata, that you have specific evidence about. Rashi says, it's almost as if Rashi would put the Vayadata in bold. Me'otan sheyadata, from those that Hatova, the good. She'asu b'Mitzrayim, right? What does that mean? Hatova she'asu b'Mitzrayim, Rick?
The good that they had done in Egypt.
Right, and the good that they had done on behalf of their fellow Israelites. They already had proven their mettle of being able to be proper representatives and be as chas, as merciful on their subjects as we imagine God is with us. Ki heim ziknei ha'am v'shotrav. Those are people who are willing, who have earned the moniker of ziknei ha'am, the elders, and this is a direct quote from the verse, and also its proper supervisors. A zakein, according to this, you earn by your age. To be a shoter, very different than the modern Hebrew policeman. To be a shoter, you earn by your comportment and how you're willing to deal with the people that you're responsible for. Okay. That brings us to the end of the first comment of Rashi on this verse, which is not yet the comment where he's trying to put together the sentence a little better than we had. The first 15 minutes of this class, we're trying to put together the sentence, the order of things. Where's the madua? What's the tmol shalshom? It's in this comment of Rashi that he is going to try to do that. We have 3 minutes left, so let's try it. But Rick, let's take you off the hook because you've been on the hook.
Thanks.
Whom have we not heard from today who wants to read? Elon, do you want to start reading the next Rashi by Yuku Shotrei B'nai Israel?
Sure. Let me just get it.
It's the second Rashi comment on verse 14.
Second Rashi comment on verse 14. Oh, I got it. Vayikush shotrei b'nei Israel, hashotrim. That one?
No, that's the first comment. Now go to, there's a second one where it's the same opening words, Vayikush shotrei b'nei Israel, and then you have the Hebrew Asher Samu Nogsei Pharaoh. A little bit farther down.
I can't seem to find it, so I'll take a pass.
Okay. Let me do a little bit of it, and then we'll finish up next week. So, Vayuku shotrei b'nei Israel, Asher Sam. So again, this comment of Rashi is Rashi doing reconstructive surgery on the verse. The only chiddush here is our learning how he thinks the sentence could or should have been written for it to make more sense. So, Vayuku shotrei b'nei Israel, the supervisors of the Israelites were smitten. Which supervisors? Rashi interpolates Asher Samu Nogsei Pharaoh Otam Lashotrim Alehem, whom had been placed by the Noksei Pharaoh, by the Pharaoh's taskmasters, to be Shotrim, supervisors upon them. Lemor Madua And the next phrase, the Lemor Madua, saying, why do you, which we had a machloket about, was that describing what had happened before? Rashi is agreeing with Joel and Larry here that this Lemor Madua, saying, why do you, is specifically giving the explanation for why they're being smitten. Because while they're smiting them, the Noksim are saying to them, why are you? Lama vayuku? Why were those people smitten? Shehayu omrim lahem, that the taskmasters were saying to the supervisors, Madua lo chilitem, why have you not completed? Gam tmol gam hayom, what does that mean? Neither yesterday nor today. This is, think about Larry's comment about the ray. Why yesterday and today have you not completed chok hakatsuv? Katsuv is an amount, like a ketsev is a finality. The required amount, alechem lilbon, that is still upon you to make bricks. Kitmol hashlishi shehu yom shalif nehetmol. So he's saying the same thing that you were saying, Larry, about the rays, but he's using slightly different words. He's basically saying that where am I in the verse? That that kitmol shilshom, you were saying, means yesterday and everything before that. Rashi is saying that kitmol shilshom is simply a way of saying the day before yesterday and every day before that, rather than making use of the word tmol a second time. And I think your answer is much more elegant. Vehu haya biyot hateven nitan lehem. And the tmol shilshom, which again to Rashi means not yesterday and the day before yesterday, but rather the day before yesterday, every day before that, that was back in the era when the straw was being given to them. And so why, going back to Joanna's read of neither nor, why neither today nor yesterday have you, and by you I mean the people you're supervising, produced the allotment that you had been producing starting the day before yesterday and every day before that? Without Rashi's reconstruction, we still know what the verse meant, but this is just his way of putting the pieces back together. When we meet next time, we'll see Rashi's treatment just on the grammar of the word vayuku, and we'll pick it up then.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.